Baruch Hashem, today's Daf Yomi is Bava Metzia Daf Mem Zayin Bava Metzia 47. We're going to start in the bottom of Mem Vav Hamabez 46b. The last line, the Daf Yomi is dedicated for Yeshua, for Am Yisrael, Hatzah, for the Shvuyim Shmira, for the Chayalim. So the Daf Yomi tells us that Amar Rabba, Amar Rav Huna, that we have two Amoraim who argue about what Rav Huna said. Says Rabba in the name of Rav Huna that if a person has some coins in his hand and he says to a person, Mechorli be'elu, he says, listen, sell me, let's just say, sell me your watch in exchange for this, what I have in my hand, kana. Then we're going to say that it serves as a valid method of acquisition, meaning to say it's going to be acquired through kinyan chalipin. Now, once this person takes a hold of the money, let's say Reuben has the money, says to Shimon, sell me your watch in exchange for this money. That once Shimon takes the money, Reuben has acquired the watch. And the Gemara is going to say, but wait, we said that coins cannot serve as the chalipin, meaning to say that this purchase is being effectuated not through the money, but through the fact that the money is serving as a coin, as an object, and not as a coin, but as an object. And therefore, this is called the kinyan of chalipin. So if a person says, sell me for these, kana, but yet at the same time, yeshu olav ona, we're on the top of 47a, we're going to say at the same time, the law of ona applies. What's the law of ona? The law of ona is a complicated law in its own right, which we're not going to get fully into. But it's the idea that you're not allowed to overpay or underpay for an item, and if you do, the sale is void. So even though the coins here are serving as a utensil in the sense that you're trading it for the object that you're purchasing, nevertheless, we're going to say that the laws of ona apply if the two objects are not similar in value. So the Gemara explains kana afagav mashach, that if Reuven gives his coins to Shimon, then Reuven has acquired Shimon's, let's say, watch here, even though Reuven has not pulled on the watch. Why? The kivan de lo kapid kana, because since Shimon didn't bother to count how much money Reuven has, he didn't care about the actual number of coins. So it's clear he's not viewing this as coins. He's viewing this as an object. And so therefore, once he pulls on the coins, then it's going to be kinyan chalipin. And you don't have to pull on both objects. You only have to pull on one. So he's pulled on one object, which is the coins. And so therefore, Reuven has acquired the watch, so to speak. Given the lokapet kana, the ki chalipin dummy, because it's like a kinyan chalipin. And secondly, v'yesh olav ona. Why do we say that the laws of ona apply? Because the machar li be'elu, he said, sell to me for these, which means to say he's viewing it as a value. And so the machar li be'elu kamar, he's viewing it as a value. And so therefore, anytime you're viewing something as a value, we say that the laws of ona apply. That was the way that Rabba interpreted Rav Huna, but Rav Abba had a different version of what Rav Huna said. Rav Abba says in Amar Rav Huna, Mechorli be'elu kana. That's the same. He says, "You sell it to me for this handful of coins, then it's a valid acquisition." Ve'ein lo olav ona, but the laws of ona don't apply. He says the laws of ona don't apply because it's not money; it's just the value, and it's not actual cash. So therefore, the laws of ona don't apply. So the Gemara says, okay, well, it's pshita, it's obvious, pshitalan damin ve'in makben alayim, that it's obvious to us that if he gave him money or an object as under the guise of money, and the person doesn't care if they're equal, pshita damin ve'in makben alayim, it's obviously the case that he gives him money. Both of them agree if he gives him money, but he doesn't say exactly how much money he's giving, that's going to serve as a kinyan chalipin. That we've just said. Both Rabba and Rav Abba agreed to that statement. But because we said that that he's acquired it because it's like the kinyan chalipin. But what about the reverse? Chalipin, let's say he's giving this item as an exchange. He says, I'm giving you my watch, which is worth $24, in exchange for your hat, which is worth $24. So would we say there, we're also going to view it as a kinyan chalipin, or maybe we're going to view that So Gemara says, "Ma, what will be the law there?" Meaning to say, will one of them be acquired through a kinyan meshicha of the other one, or do we say that since he's so particular about the value that we're going to view one as money, and it's money, and money you don't acquire until the person. It's not enough to pull one object, but you have to pull both objects in that case. And so therefore, do we see if they care about the money that we're going to view it not as money? They care about the exact value of the object that we don't care about, that we don't view it as money, but as an object, but as money. And so therefore you need to do the Mashiach on both of them. So Amar Avada Barava Tashma. Let's try and answer this question. So he says, let's try and answer this question from a brisa. What does the brisa say? Tofes paraso. Let's say a guy's standing in the marketplace. He's standing in 2-pound circle and he's holding his cow. When he says, he says, what are you doing with the cow in 2-pound circle? He says, he says, I have the cow because I want your donkey. I need a donkey. So the guy says, well, yeshli chamor shani no telucha. He says, okay, I'll give you my donkey. Parascha b'kama. How much is your cow worth? The guy says, b'kach b'kach. My cow's worth $1,000. He says, v'chamorcha b'kama. He says, and what's your donkey worth? B'kach b'kach. My donkey's worth $1,000. Mashach bala chamor sapara. So the guy who owns the donkey, once he pulls the cow, below his big bala paro imshochas achamor, and the owner of the cow does not pull on the donkey ad shemesa chamor before the donkey died. That the owner of the donkey has not acquired the cow. And so therefore, in this case, we see that since they made an exact value, you need to have them both do the Mashicha, or else it's not going to be a valid acquisition. So this seems to support that idea that in the case where they give an exact price on their object, we're not going to view it as we're going to view it as damim, and you don't pull on one of them in order to make a kinyan, but you need to pull on both. So the Gemara says, don't we learn from here that if it's a case of chalipin, but you care about the exact value, then you haven't acquired it. Rava says, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? You think by chalipin we're talking with fools that they don't care about the exact value? Of course, you always care about the exact value. Every time there's chalipin, you care about the exact value. Vikana, and once you pull on one of them, you've acquired the other one. So what's this case referring to? That the guy who says, I'll trade you my donkey only for your cow and your sheep. And therefore the guy who's acquiring the cow and the sheep, he only pulled the cow. He did an incomplete kinyan. He didn't pull the sheep. And so therefore, since he didn't pull the sheep, and so therefore he didn't do a complete sheep. So therefore, if the guy hadn't pulled the donkey, the deal is not done yet. And so therefore, if the donkey dies, the sale is canceled. So now let's go back to the statements that we recorded that in the name of Rav Huna, Rav Abba in the name of Rav Huna, and Rav Abba in the name of Rav Huna. Amar Mar, he says, Machorli be'elu, says, sell me, let's say your watch in exchange for this bag of coins. Kana, then once the guy pulls on the coins, he's acquired it. V'yeshlo avona, and the laws of ona apply. That's the way Rabba interpreted it. Lema savar afuna. So basically, we see from this idea that once he pulls on the money, that you've acquired the object that you're trying to buy. So doesn't this prove matpeya nasa chalipin? Is Rav Huna saying that coins can become like an object in which you could do a kinyan chalipin? Do you want to say that radical position that Rav Huna is getting involved in that dispute we had yesterday? Gemara says no. There's a different reason why Rav Huna says it works in this case. Why? What's the reasoning? Lema Rav Huna, there must be that Lema Savar Rav Huna. No, Rav Huna Savar like Rav Yochanan. Rav Huna holds like Rav Yochanan. What does Rav Yochanan say? Rav Yochanan's other position who says Dvar Torah Ma'os Konos. Rav Yochanan's other position who says, biblically speaking, the money really does work to acquire. Meaning to say, if I'm giving you my money, once you take the money, biblically speaking, it's a valid acquisition. So if that's the case, why did the rabbis say, why did the sages say Mashiach Kona? Why did the sages say actually the taking the money is not a valid is not the actual moment of kinyan, but the actual moment of the kinyan is only when you pull the object. Only because we're concerned that if we allow the transaction to be done at the moment that one person grabs the money before the other person grabs the object into his possession, then we could have a terrible situation which leads to a lot of fighting. And what is that? Let's say I go to you, I'm saying, Reuben goes to Shimon and says, I'm buying all your pasta, and he gives him $100. Says, all the pasta you have in your attic. And then he says, okay, come by tomorrow and pick it up. In the meantime, God forbid, there's a fire in the house and the pasta's burning. And Shimon's going to say, it's not my fire. I don't care. And then Reuben's going to be upset. And it's going to be a whole litigation. So we want to stop that problem. And so therefore we say you haven't acquired it until you dragged it into your possession. And that the rabbis made a decree in that case. The milsa the shlicha gazur barabanan. In a matter which is very common, the rabbis made the decree that the sale doesn't take place. But milsa the lo shlicha. But in our case over here, in this case over here, which is an uncommon situation, so therefore, well, gazru berabanan, meaning to say, where he says, what's so uncommon about this case? Where the guy says, oh, just give me your money. I don't care how much it is. That's a very uncommon situation. So the rabbis did not make the decree that money doesn't acquire. So in that case, since it's so uncommon, the rabbis made the decree that the acquisition takes effect. The rabbis did not make the decree, and so therefore the acquisition takes effect. We see from here that it's not working. This transaction is not working. The reason why it takes effect is not because the coins are considered a utensil, but because the guy doesn't care about how many coins there are. So Amarle Marhuna Braid Rav Nachman Rav Ashi Atun Hachum Asnisala. That was how you had this statement. So this person who said this is the son of Rav Nachman. His name was Marhuna, Mr. Huna. He says you had this statement like this. Anan Hachim Asninola. We have the statement like this. We indeed added explicitly like this. Rav Huna says it's not that the coins cannot become the chalipin, so it's taking effect not because the coins are chalipin, but because we didn't make the decree about coins not being acquired in this case. So now the Gemara asks a fundamental question. Okay, when we say there's something called the kinyan chalipin, where let's say one person wants to buy a watch, so the other person gives them a handkerchief, which is symbolic. And thereby, so one of the people gives him a handkerchief, and which is a symbolic exchange, and thereby the other one acquires the watch. So, but the question is, whose handkerchief do you use? Do you use the seller's handkerchief or the buyer's handkerchief? But Mekonin, Rav Amar Bekelev Shalkona. Rav says he used the utensil, the handkerchief of the purchaser. The Nichole Lakona, the Lahave. So excuse me. So Rav Huna says, Rav says you use the kelev of the kone. Why? The nichole kone, because the reason why you want to use the handkerchief of the one purchasing, the nichole kone they'll have a makne kone. So because the purchaser wants the seller to take his handkerchief. So as a result of this, he'll sell him or give to him his, let's say, watch that he's purchasing. So that makes sense. But that's the way Rav understands, that the purchaser has to give him his handkerchief. The Levi Amar Bekelev Shamachna, Levi says, no, the seller gives him his handkerchief. As we're about to explain. So Amar Rav Huna midiskarto Rava Levi Amar Bekelev Shamachna. But according to Levi, he says that we give him the seller gives him his handkerchief, and thereby when the purchaser picks it up, he's also getting his watch. If that would be the case, Hakakani Ara Agav Glima. Well, if that's the case, you should be able to acquire land via handkerchief. Basically, one-to-one, Rashi explains, somebody who gives land to his friend by giving him a handkerchief, and the one who's receiving the gift just pulls on the handkerchief from the giver, he should be able to acquire the land with the handkerchief by pulling on the handkerchief. Why don't we say that works? So, and if that would be the case, if that would be the case, then land, which is considered guaranteed property, should be able to be acquired with property that's not guaranteed. But we learned the opposite. We learned the opposite, that if you acquire real estate, you can acquire movables along with it. But if you acquire movables, you can't acquire real estate along with it. So Amarle, so he responds to him. So Rava responds to Rafunimi Diskarta. He responds to him, if Levi was here and he heard your question, he would throw in your face pulse denura. Pulse denura is like sparks of fire, meaning to say he would have excommunicated you. Misavris klima maknile. Do you think that you misunderstood the concept going on here? You think the handkerchief, when the seller gives his handkerchief to the purchaser and the purchaser picks it up, that as a result of the handkerchief, he's also giving over the other object that he wants to sell? That's not what's going on. What's going on here is that actually the purchaser is giving a gift to the seller. What's he giving? By picking up the handkerchief, he's giving him the benefit that I'm accepting your gift, that's valuable. So therefore, he's giving him benefit that I'm accepting your gift. And so therefore, in exchange for that, he's giving him this watch, or so to speak, this object. So the Gemara says, okay, so kitanoi. The Gemara says this is actually machlokas. The dispute of Rav and Levi is actually a machlokas Tanaim. This dispute, which we said that Rav says he used the utensil of the purchaser, and Levi says he used the utensil of the seller. It's actually machlokas Tanaim, because it says in the book of Ruth, in the 4th chapter, V'zos lefanim b'Yisrael. Remember when Boaz wanted to marry Ruth, he first had to and there was the land of the Redeemer. And so in that circumstance, so what did he have to do there? So it says in the pasuk there in the book of Ruth, that this was the law in Israel for redemption and exchange. L'kayim kol davar, if you wanted to effectuate a deal, if you wanted to purchase something, shoaf ish nalo v'nasan l're'ehu. You person would have to remove his shoe from himself and give it to his friend. Geula, when it says in the pasuk al geula about tmura, geula refers to a mechira, refers to a sale. So it states in the verse, it says in the pasuk lo yigael, and that refers to a sale in that case. And also tmura zuchalipin, tmura means to exchange, as omer lo yachlifena v'lo yamiro so. So what would they do? A kaim called avar. So if they wanted to uphold something, shof ish na'lov and nasan l're'ehu. Man would remove his shoe and give it to his friend. And says the Gemara, mina salami, who gave his shoe to whom? Boaz nasan l'goal. Boaz gave his shoe to the Redeemer in that circumstance. And so therefore, the Redeemer, because the Redeemer, what happened was it was a packaged deal. The fields of Elimelech, who was the husband of Naomi and the father-in-law of Ruth, and would also, whoever went to those fields would also have to marry Ruth. So therefore, what happened was, according to this approach, Boaz gave his shoe to the Redeemer, and then the seller, i.e. the other Ploni Almoni, he gave the fields of Elimelech and the right to marry Ruth to Boaz. Rabbi Huda says, and Rabbi Huda is like Levi, go al Natan or Boaz. So according to the first approach, Rav, Boaz Natan Goal, that Boaz is the purchaser and he gave him his shoe. And according to the second approach, the Redeemer, like Levi, the seller gave it to Boaz. Tana Konan Bekui Alpha Pisha Aimbo Shavapruta. So the Gemara cites a brisa that you purchase with the utensil as part of the Kinyan Chalipin, even though excuse me, even though it's not worth a penny. The utensil used doesn't have to be worth a penny. When do we say the utensil doesn't need to be worth a penny? But the fruits, they have to be worth at least so when do we say that the utensil doesn't need to be worth a penny? By utensil, but by fruits, then we're going to say you can't use fruits. According to Rav Nachman, you can't use fruits to purchase. Rav Sheshes Amar Afil b'Peiros. Rav Sheshes says you can even use fruits as a purchase. So the Gemara says, my time in Rav Nachman. Why does Rav Nachman say you can't do a kinyan chalipa with fruits? He says it's based upon the fact that it says in that story of Ruth and Boaz, Amar Krav, no, it says with his shoe. No, in Midiachrini lo, that he uses a utensil, something like a shoe. My time in Rav Sheshes. Why does Rav Sheshes say you can't use fruits? Why does Rav Sheshes say you can use fruits? Amar Krav, l'kayim kol davar. You can use anything. It says in the pasuk. But Rav Nachman, Nami Aksiv L'Kayim Kol Davar. What does Rav Nachman do with the fact that Pasuk says L'Kayim Kol Davar? Who L'Kayim Kol Davar the Niknin B'Mano, the Niknin B'Min. So Rav Nachman says no, it's anything Kol Davar the Niknin B'Min. Meaning to say that what does it mean when it says l'kol davar? It means that also the word geula means to say, even though it means with a kinyan sudar and tamura means with something they exchange things, and that's all it's telling us. And Rav Sheshis, what does he do? Nami aksiv nalo amar Rav Sheshis ma nalo davar mesuyam means just like something that just like the shoe is something complete. I've called davar mesuyam. It has to be something complete. That you can't use a half a pomegranate or a half a nut. When we write a document today and we want to say that the sale took place, the mana de kosher lamiknebe. Like whom do we go when we say the mana de kosher with a kosher utensil miknayaba to acquire something? Like whom do we say when we do that? But what does it mean? The mana with the utensil like Rav Nachman, and now Rav Sheshes says you could even use the fruit. The Amar Konim Beperos. Now like Rav Sheshes says you could use the fruit. The kosher that it's kosher Shmuel to exclude the position of Shmuel, who says Konin b'meruka. Shmuel says you could acquire even with a utensil that's made out of animal dung. But the Lemiknaya Lafuke Midalevi excludes the position of Levi, who says Bekelev Shalmakna. No, it has to be the utensil of the purchaser, not the seller. Kamash Malal Lemiknaya Velol Knuye. It's the one who's purchasing, not the one who's selling it. Bay. What do we do with the word bay? Rav Papa says Lamiute Matbeya. It says that you can't use a coin to do the acquisition. They say you can't use anything that's prohibited to have benefit from it. Alternative version of Bay is Amar Papa Lamute Matbeya Dekasher. He says to exclude a coin. Lamute Matbeya and Dekasher. What do we do with the word Dekasher? To exclude something that is prohibited to have benefit from. But the word, but we don't need to exclude the animal dung, utensil made of animal dung because it's so obvious. Okay, and continue with the Mishnah. Simon that if there was an asimon and you pull on the asimon, then you've acquired the coins. That's what our Mishnah said. So what is, meaning to say, just like the gold acquires the silver, by pulling on the gold, you acquire the silver. By pulling on the asimon is the pay rate, and you acquire the coins. What's an asimon? It's not the thing that you drop in the telephones in Israel, but we see that is the source for that statement. Many years ago, you had to use an asimon. They don't even have payphones anymore. You have to use an asimon to make a phone call. Remember that, Meyer? In Israel, you have to use an asimon. They still have them. Amarav Mos Anitonos Besimin Beis Hamercha. So else it's like a token. You didn't give actual coins to the balan, to the bath attendant. You gave him this coin, so he would know how many people were going in there. Meisvei, so he contradict this from a Mishnah in Mesachas Meiser Sheni. Emachal Meiser Sheni al Asimon, that you're not allowed to redeem the Meiser Sheni onto an asimon, and not a money that you give in the base of merchats to the bath attendant. Miklal, this proves clearly the asimon clearly speaking, the asimon is not the money that you give to the token that you give to the bath attendant. I'm going to say the Mishnah is just explaining the second clause, just explaining the first clause. But didn't we learn Mechal and Meiser Sheni al asimon? Rabbi Dos says you can redeem the Meiser Sheni onto an asimon. And you can't. Vishavin, but they both agree. Vishavin she'ein mechalin almalos anitonos besimin beis hamerchos, and they both agree that you can't redeem the Meiser Sheni onto money that was redeemed in that you used to redeem in the bathhouse. So it's very clear when they both say the asimon is not that. Elam Rabbi Yochanan Maya asimon pulsa. What's an asimon? A pulsa. It's like basically an unminted coin. Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Dos, Rabbi Shmuel Amar Davar Echad. So Rabbi Yochanan said, Rabbi Dos, Rabbi Shmuel said the same thing. Rabbi Dos to Amran. Rabbi Dos, that which we said, that you're allowed to redeem a Meiser Sheni onto an asimon. Rabbi Shmuel Mahi, the Tanya Mitzarta Kesef Yadchol Rabbas Kol Davar Nitzra Biyad. Rabbi Shmuel says you redeem the Meiser Sheni onto anything that you have in your hand, which includes an asimon. Rabbi Kiva Omer Rabbas Kol Davar Sheish L'Tzur. He says no, you can't redeem it according to Rabbi Kiva. You can't redeem it on an asimon. It has to be a a coin which has a specific form or image on it. So now we said Ketzad it mashchim and a paris will nosam well most any so that one if you're trying to do an exchange, one person gives him money and the other one gives him the fruits. If somebody gives him fruits, but the other one is not giving him the money, then the deal is done. Once you drag the fruits, it's done, and the person cannot change his mind. Once he dragged the fruits, the deal is done. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Now we have the statement we have before. Divrei Torah Mos Konos. Biblically speaking, the money affects the acquisition. Why did the rabbi say that pulling on the object is what does the acquisition? We're concerned that he might come to say your wheat was burnt in the attic, and so therefore I didn't save it because it was your wheat. So therefore we say no, it's only an acquisition once you pull the wheat. So man the Dleka by assuming the Gemara says, well, in the end, whoever caused the fire should have to pay. No, so the Gemara says, Zera Shema Tipo Dleka Ba'ones. Well, maybe it'll be an accidental fire. Well, Mukmas Lahu Bershuse, and if it will be in his possession, Masar Nafshe and Tarachumatzil. If the guy will still own the wheat, he'll go save it below. But if he won't own the wheat, well, Masar Nafshe and Matzil. So then he wouldn't save it. So therefore, we say it's still his until the guy it's still the seller's until the purchaser actually pulls it out of his possession. The idea that you only acquire something through Mashicha, Reish Lakish says it's clear from the Torah. My time into Reish Lakish, what's the reasoning? Amar Krav Kitim Karu Mimkar Ramisecha Okonomi Adamisecha. If you sell something or you purchasing something from the hand of your friend, Davar Nikna Miyal Yad. By pulling something from hand to hand, you've acquired something. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Miyad, it says from hand to hand, Umiute Karkos. Now he says when it says Miyad Amisecha, that doesn't mean that you purchase something only through Mashicha. It means to say delays pay. It's to exclude real estate. Delays pay or not. That the laws of overcharging and thereby canceling the sale, or underpaying and thereby canceling the sale, don't apply to real estate. For Reish Lakish says Imkein Luchtov Krav Chitim Karu Memkar Miyad Amisecha Al Tonu O Kana. So why does it say O Kana? O Kana Lamoish Mamino Meshicha. So Reish Lakish says that's to teach us Meshicha. Rabbi Yochanan O Kana my Avele. What does Rabbi Yochanan? What does Rabbi Yochanan do with the words Okana? He says it's like the following price. If you sell something, don't overcharge. I only know that the purchaser can't have to be overpay. But mis'ana mocher, how do I know that the seller can it's not appropriate for the seller to be underpaid? Tamomar okano, altono. So therefore, let's say okano or altono. Reish Lakish tarti gamramini. Reish Lakish learning that both things from the words okano. So now the Gemara says Tanan. So from the fact that Rabbi Shimon, again, Reish Lakish says you can only acquire something through Mashicha, not through money. But what about the fact that it says Tanami or in our Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon says Kol Shakesef Yado Al Ayon. Whoever has the money, he can go back. Meaning to say, even the person who received the money, but the other guy didn't do the Mashicha, he could cancel the sale if he received the money. But the one who gave the money can't cancel the sale. So meaning to say, Mocharu the Matzia Hadarbe, Lukeaho Matzah Hadarbe. The Reb Shimon saying the seller could recant, but not the purchaser. Now, if you say, like Rabbi Yochanan says, that biblically speaking, the money also acquires, Mishim Hachi Mochar Matzia Hadarbe. That's why the seller can recant, because Lukeaho Matzah Hadarbe. If you say that biblically speaking, money acquires, there for this reason, we could say that the Chachamim say that only the seller can go back and not the purchaser, because it's enough that the seller can go back if the movables will go up, so that he'll save them in order to make money. But they didn't say that both of them can go back. But if you want to say that biblically speaking, Mos Eno Konos, that money does not affect an acquisition, the purchaser should also be able to go back, because it wasn't the sale didn't take effect at all. So it's a question. It's a question on Rabbi Yochanan. Excuse me, the question on Rish Lakish, because Rish Lakish says that biblically speaking, the money does not acquire. So Rish Lakish says, I was only speaking according to the position of the Rabbanon. I wasn't going according to the Shita of Rabbi Shimon. Okay, we'll have to stop here because we have to daven upstairs. A big shkoyach to everybody. If you have any questions, happy to address.